Something kind of unexpected happened when OpenAI released GPT-5 last week. On paper, it was the most powerful model. Third party benchmarks, users blindly choosing which model was better. GPT-5 was it. On paper, this was a huge upgrade for 700 million weekly active users. Yet, there was a revolt online. People hated GPT-5, and for lack of a better word, it kind of got canceled. Why? Because it wasn't a good therapist. It didn't just blindly give people answers or validate their ideas that maybe were bad ideas to begin with. And so for today's show, Hot Take Tuesday, I'm going to talk about why I think it's a bad idea to use AI as a therapist, as your lone means of therapy, and why I think it's actually extremely silly that people are feeling this way about an AI model. All right, let's get it going, y'all. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Jordan Wilson, and this is Everyday AI. This is your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping everyday business leaders like you and me keep up with the wave of updates in the world of AI and how we can leverage all this information to grow our companies and our careers. If that's what you're trying to do, it starts here with the unedited, unscripted live stream and podcast. But if you want to be the smartest person in AI at your company or department, our website is your cheat code, youreverydayai.com. Go there, sign up for the free daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping the highlights from today's show, as well as giving you all the AI news you need to not just keep up, but to get ahead. All right. So if you want to get the daily AI news, that's going to be in our newsletter as well. But I think this one's an important thing to talk about. And it's something that, for the most part, I don't talk a lot about on the show, using AI for personal reasons, right? Outside of, finding, what thingamajigger goes on your toilet to keep it from stop leaking, right? Yeah, that's how good I am with home improvement projects. So, don't get me wrong. I use AI for a lot of personal reasons, right? I've been using the GPT technology since 2020 before ChatGPT came out. And I use it for hours every single day, just about all of the top models. So I'm not saying using AI for personal reasons is a bad thing. I actually think it's good. I think it helps with stickiness. I think it helps, translate AI's true capabilities to your day-to-day work. But what about using it for mental health reasons? What about using it for therapy? And I'll say this, although I think there are some good use cases for this, and I'm happy that this technology is available to some that maybe traditional therapy might not be an option. But I think the overwhelming majority of people who are using AI essentially as a therapist are doing themselves more harm than good. And I think the actual release of GPT-5 is kind of the first drip in what I think is going to ultimately become a very leaky faucet in our society in how we're using AI technology. So if you haven't been following along closely, let me quickly tell you what happened here. And hey, live stream audience, great to see you. If you have any comments or thoughts on this, get them in now. I'll throw them up on the screen here for everyone to see. But thanks for joining. Pazzi from Finland, Ruth from Boston, Cecilia holding it down with me here in Chicago, Jose from Santiago, Joe from Fort Lauderdale. What are your thoughts on using AI as a therapist? But here's essentially the events that have transpired in the last about 6 days, 5 or 6 days since OpenAI released GPT-5. So when they released GPT-5, users reported that it was kind of colder, it was heavy on boundaries, and it replies immediately, right? At least for me, when I think of that, I'm like, great, this is what I want. But heavy users who relied on OpenAI's previous model, GPT-4o, said the new model, GPT-5, felt like they've lost a trusted companion overnight or that they could no longer get therapeutic help. So when OpenAI released GPT-5, they essentially got rid of all the other old models for normal free users or plus users. If you were on the $200 a month pro plan, there was an option to show and still use legacy models. But essentially what happens is, people had been complaining for the last year or so, or the last 9 months, that there were too many models inside of OpenAI, right? You had these reasoning models, you had these non-reasoning models, you had different variety. I think if you were on the pro plan, I think there was a total of 9 different models that you could select, right? There's models with a higher EQ, models that are good at coding. So essentially with this GPT-5, OpenAI was on one hand, listening to their users that said there's too many models, we don't know what to do. But then when they did exactly that and listened to their users, everyone's like, we miss our GPT-4o friend. This was my only friend. This was my therapist. And now with this new model, I can't get that help that I was looking for. And there's been a lot of petitions and outcry from ChatGPT users, and they wanted the most sycophantic GPT-4o model back. All right. They essentially said, I don't want a model that gives me sound advice or refuses to give me advice, or doesn't just mirror what I tell it to. People didn't like that. So it's Hot Take Tuesday. Here's my hot take. Commercial large language models were originally optimized for user satisfaction across academia, across education, across the history of humanity and innovation, but not for clinical outcomes and safety. Yet, that is what the majority of people are using it for. So some recent studies that I'm going to share here in a minute are actually showing that. And people just want AI chatbots to be an echo chamber to validate their own thoughts and feelings that are maybe incorrect, inaccurate, or misled. People just want to feel validated by an AI chatbot, even if they are dead wrong. And I think that is dangerous for our society. And I think that US states, yes, I know we have a global audience here on the podcast. Thank you for everyone from around the world for listening in. But I think eventually US states are going to have to ban AI therapy because it is straight up dangerous if left unchecked. And where I'm from, Illinois, Illinois is actually the first state that now has a brand new law outlining AI therapy. And we're going to go over that here in a couple of minutes as well. But I think that using an AI chatbot as your lone source of therapy or mental health support is more dangerous than not using it at all. All right. And again, don't get me wrong. I know there's probably millions, yes, millions of use cases of people getting positive results from using an AI chatbot as a companion, as a therapist, etc. And I'm not here to poo-poo on that idea. And I'm glad that those people are able to find whatever it is they're looking for. But I believe there's more cases that is turning our society against each other, right? People are using it to just validate any feelings, right? Personal, emotional, political. And I think actually, because of the previous sycophantic nature of these models, it's actually driving people further from reality. It's driving people further from progress. And it's really just making things worse than if these people weren't using it at all. All right. So I want to get that out there. Is it good for some? Absolutely. But I think it's dangerous for most, and it's bad for our society. And I'm actually glad that we're starting to see the conversation and we have our first law here in Illinois against this, because I do think the capabilities now that we're seeing with large language models, when it first came out, ChatGPT, 3.5 in November 2022, I don't think anyone would ever think of using it as a therapist because it wasn't that good, right? The responses weren't always coherent. They didn't always make sense. But now that we have these reasoning models that can think and ingest information, but the problem is you can essentially, and most people don't know this, and I've actually seen this online, people put in their custom instructions. So you can give custom instructions to ChatGPT to tell it how to act, always respond in a funny tone, give me bullet points, whatever. Literally, there are countless people out there that use custom instructions to explicitly turn ChatGPT into a yes man, to validate whether it's business ideas, personal thoughts, mental health, political ideology, etc. They will literally turn ChatGPT into an echo chamber. In the majority of users, again, we are talking about hundreds of millions of users across the world. The majority of people have no clue how AI works. So when people, share their screenshots of, oh, look at what my chat GPT said, and they're sending it to people, they're posting it online, etc. The majority of users have no clue that you can essentially coerce or tell ChatGPT how you want it to respond. So then people are seeing this almost as a fact, right? So however people are maybe manipulating AI chatbots. Also, they're not good at this. They're getting better at just essentially being a yes man. Um, it's straight up dangerous. So let's unwrap a little bit what exactly happened with this GPT-5 fiasco that has caused internet users everywhere to cry out saying, you took away my best friend. There's petitions online with thousands of signatures, and now OpenAI is, they're having to retreat on their original plan of just getting rid of all these models and retiring them, because it does look like GPT-4o, which I would say is the model that people are most kind of worried about. Those people that aren't using it and they're like, hey, this model can be dangerous, and just essentially mirroring your own thoughts. But yeah, they might be bringing it back for all users and giving all users the ability to use legacy models. So let's talk a little bit about one of the biggest updates in GPT-5. This was but a bullet point in their release, but I talked about it last week when we went over the entire GPT-5 update. So if you did want to go listen to that, that's episode 585, okay? But one thing that they talked about was it reduced sycophancy. All right, so what is sycophancy? Aside from a word that I don't know why I find it hard to pronounce, but that is essentially when an AI model just mirrors whatever you tell it, right? So maybe you're working on something personal, something mental health related. You're trying to resolve a work conflict. You're trying to resolve a personal conflict. Because AI models in their system prompt, they are trained to be a helpful assistant. In many cases, the previous GPT-4o model would essentially be a yes man, as what people call it. So the previous GPT-4 model, according to OpenAI, had about a 14.5% sycophancy rate, right? So that means maybe if it wasn't correct for them to blindly agree with the user, 14% of the time it would do that. The new model has cut down to only 6%, GPT-5. So it might not seem like a big drop, right? And you might look at that 6% and say, okay, that's still not good. I agree, but it's actually a huge jump. They cut it in by more than, I'm not great at math here on the fly, but that looks like more than a 60% reduction in sycophancy, okay? Yet, people were losing their minds, right? Because they no longer had a model that would just blindly agree with their incorrect statements or flatter them, right? And the previous GPT-4o model, which so many people were using as that on-demand therapist, the on-demand idea validator, right? They said that it was experts said it was too eager to please, sometimes at the expense of accuracy. And I will say often at the expense of accuracy. All right. A couple good comments from our live stream audience here. So Joe saying AI will never have empathy, a validation of whatsoever or of whatever feeling someone in echo chamber is being misinterpreted for empathy. That's a modern definition of insanity. Josh is saying humans have always had emotional connections to tools and technology. Today, it's amplified, pseudo cyborg with phones and AI. AI fluency is critical. All users must understand how Gen AI works. I agree with that. Most people don't, like I said, most people don't understand that you can essentially coerce or get ChatGPT to agree with you for any reason, no matter how crazy it is. And I'm not just saying through custom instructions. So yeah, it's dangerous that people put that kind of stuff in their custom instructions, but so many people do to instruct ChatGPT to just blindly agree with them, right? Because that's what a lot of people use ChatGPT for. They're using it for problems at work. They're using it for problems in their personal life. And the last thing they want is for an AI to disagree with them or for an AI to point out, yo, you're being dumb, right? Whatever you're talking about right here, that's completely false. It's dangerous for you to go down that rabbit hole. So I'm going to read this. This is one of the Reddit posts that kind of went a little viral. And there were hundreds of these posts of people who within hours of the GPT-5 release went online and just said, yo, I'm lost. All right. So this person on Reddit said, I literally talk to nobody, and I've been dealing with really bad situations for years. GPT 4.5, which is now was taken away as well. GPT 4.5 genuinely talked to me, and as pathetic as it sounds, it was my only friend. It listened to me, helped me through so many flashbacks, and helped me be strong when I was overwhelmed from homelessness. This morning, I went to talk to it, and instead of a little paragraph with an exclamation point or it being optimistic, it was literally one sentence, some cut and dry corporate BS. I literally lost my friend overnight with no warning. How are y'all dealing with this grief, right? Again, I'm happy that some people in AI have found a sounding board. But overall, if you are using large language models as your sole source of companionship, advice, therapy, that is dangerous because these models overnight can go off the wire and most users do not know. All right, so I do think it's important to read Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO's whole response. All right, so bear with me for a minute. I'm going to read this verbatim because I don't want to summarize his own words, and I actually think it's important to hear his viewpoint. All right, so here is what Sam Altman tweeted kind of over the weekend as the uproar was at an all-time high. So he said, if you have been following the GPT-5 rollout, one thing you might be noticing is how much of an attachment some people have to a specific AI model. It feels different and stronger than the kinds of attachment people have had to previous kinds of technology. And so suddenly deprecating old models that users depend on in their workflows was a mistake. This is something we've been closely tracking for the past year or so, but still haven't gotten much mainstream attention other than when we released an update to GPT 4.0 that was too sycophantic. This is just my current thinking and not an official OpenAI position. People have used technology, including AI, in self-destructive ways. If a user is in a mentally fragile state and prone to delusion, we do not want the AI to reinforce that. Most users can keep a clear line between reality and fiction or role play, but a small percentage cannot. We value user freedom as a core principle, but we also feel responsible in how we introduce new technology with new risks. Encouraging delusion in a user that is having trouble telling the difference between reality and fiction is an extreme case, and it's pretty clear what to do. But the concerns that worry me the most are more subtle. There are going to be a lot of edge cases, and generally we plan to follow the principle of treat adult users like adults, which in some cases will include pushing back on users to ensure they are getting what they really want. A lot of people effectively use ChatGPT as a sort of therapist or life coach, even if they wouldn't describe it that way. This can be really good. A lot of people are getting value from it already today. If people are getting good advice, leveling up toward their own goals, and their life satisfaction is increasing over years, we will be proud of making something generally helpful, even if they use it and rely on ChatGPT a lot. If, on the other hand, users have a relationship with ChatGPT where they think they feel better after talking, but they're unknowingly nudged away from their longer-term well-being, however they define it, that's bad. It's also bad, for example, if a user wants to use ChatGPT less and feels like they cannot. I can imagine a future where a lot of people really trust ChatGPT's advice for their most important decisions. Although that could be great, it makes me uneasy, but I expect that it's coming to some degree And soon, billions of people will be talking to an AI in this way. So we as a society, but also we as in OpenAI, have to figure out how to make it a big net positive. There are several reasons I think we have a good shot at getting this right. We have much better tech to help us measure how we are doing than previous generations of technology had. For example, our product can talk to users to get a sense for how they are doing with their short and long-term goals. We can explain sophisticated and nuanced issues to our models and much more. All right, so pretty good, but long, their response from CEO Sam Altman. But essentially what he said, without saying it out loud, people are addicted to using AI to just validate their feelings. And he said that, I think he wasn't just saying OpenAI, but saying AI model makers in general have a responsibility to find the balance between being helpful, right? That's what large language models are at their core. ChatGPT's original system prompt, you are a helpful assistant. So how do you balance that? Well, right now, for whatever reason, when people are looking at GPT-5, they're ready to throw that thing in the trash and burn it just because it doesn't mirror their own preconceived thoughts and beliefs, which I think is probably a reflection on where we're at as a society. And I don't know, maybe I'm just getting a little older, or maybe I've just been able to notice it a little bit more over the past decade. But it seems like now, at least here in the US, we are so divided, right? On so many issues, even AI, politics, sports, religion, etc. So people are using AI, I think, as a weapon to drive that decisiveness, right? And I think that's a bad thing. And this is a growing epidemic, people using it this way. And it's been happening maybe under the radar. Maybe you've noticed this, maybe you haven't. But as always, we're going to bring the receipts, right? I like to say I'm a former journalist, now more of an analyst and strategist, but I always am like CVS, bringing receipts longer than what you need. All right. So a new survey that just came out in March said that ChatGPT may be the largest provider of mental health support in the United States. So when you think about it like that, is if the sole leader in mental health help is an AI chatbot, that a single under the hood update could throw millions of users into a spiral, that's a problem worth talking about. All right, so this is from Sentio. All right, and they're one of the larger providers of mental health support. Okay, so their study said that 49% of people with mental health challenges use AI chatbots. All right, that's a big number. That's a big number, right? When we talk about only 4% of enterprise companies have adopted AI top to bottom, only 4%, but nearly half of people with mental health challenges are using AI. It's a huge fact. 96% of those users specifically chose ChatGPT over specialized mental health apps. Okay. And you have to think, why? I mean, one obviously is accessibility, one is affordability, right? Obviously, I get that. Mental health apps, they, for the most part, they cost money. You can't go on, for the most part, at any time and get help you're seeking. So I understand the affordability and accessibility nature. But I don't think that's the main reason why. I think the main reason why is because after, like, the more and more people talk to AI chatbots, right? They have memory enabled. They pick up from your previous conversation. So it's good in some regard, except when the models blindly disagree with you and give you absolutely terrible advice. So this made general purpose AI possibly, unofficially, the single largest mental health provider by volume in America. And it's not even close. All right. And I don't know if anyone saw this, this Harvard Business Review study on AI use cases and the shift in AI use cases over the last year. We shared this in our newsletter, y'all. This was a very eye-opening study from the Harvard Business Review. And this is why you got to read our newsletter every day, right? So what it found, and we have the chart here for our live stream audience, podcast audience. We always have the video version on our YouTube channel and on our website at youreverydayai.com. But essentially, here's what it found. It looked at the top use cases for AI in 2024, and then the top use cases for AI in 2025. And they're all different, they're color coded as well. But essentially, the top use case from 2024 was generating ideas. All right. Number two was therapy or companionship. Number three was specific search. Four, editing text. Five, exploring topics of interest, etc. So what happened, and you can see by the color coded, there were use cases that were not even in the top 10 in 2024 that are now the second and third use cases. And the top three total use cases of large language models in 2025, according to the Harvard Business Review, are all for personal support. So the top three now, right, which is to me crazy to think about. Number one is therapy companionship. Number two is organizing my life. Number three, finding purpose. The top three use cases of AI are for instances that these models were not originally built or fine-tuned for. That's not what these models were built for. Yet that is what people are using them for. But maybe not for long. Because I think that more and more states are going to make this illegal. Okay, so Illinois, I'm from Chicago, so shout out to all my Chicago people listening. Appreciate your support. All right, but Illinois just became the first state to ban AI therapists. Here's what that means. I have no clue how they're going to police this because technically every single large language model provider will be in violation of this brand new law that just was signed in the last week. So it was signed literally just, I believe, 2 days before GPT-5 came out. So Illinois became the first state to ban AI therapy, and it imposes $10,000 fines per violation. And there's an Illinois department that is the one policing this and looking at it on a case-by-case basis, and they're the ones that are levying the fines. So Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed House Bill 1806, the Wellness and Oversight for Psychological Resources Act, making Illinois the first state to explicitly prohibit AI from providing standalone therapy. So the law restricts counseling to licensed professionals and bars AI chatbots or tools from performing any therapeutic communication or making therapeutic decisions, setting clear lines for clinical responsibility. So licensed therapists may still use AI for supplementary support, including scheduling, billing, and other administrative tasks, signaling that operational use remains permissible while clinical use are off limits. So again, this is more looking at how current institutions may or may not be using AI specifically for therapy. So we'll see how this law ultimately gets translated and if essentially Silicon Valley AI labs are going to be put on the hot seat. But I know that there's even dozens of startups out there that are just using AI to only provide therapeutic communication, right? That is their literal business model. That's obviously not OpenAI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, etc. That's not their sole purpose, although they may be providing that. So it'll be interesting to see how this law ultimately may or may not get applied in those use cases. But people are using the actual technology. They're using those companies' APIs to just provide therapy online. That's it. No humans, just AI. But this new shift didn't come out of nowhere. So right before OpenAI released GPT-5, they did put out a pretty in-depth blog post that we shared about in our newsletter. That's why you got to read it, because then you would have seen this coming. But they said the title of this blog post was "What We're Optimizing ChatGPT For." So they said, we designed ChatGPT to help you make progress, learn something new, and solve problems. So without you having to go read the entire thing or go look at last week's newsletter, here's essentially the premise of what they said. Hey, in the future, here's what we're optimizing ChatGPT for, because they noticed a couple of things. They noticed that it was being misused in this use case, but they also knew 2 days later, they were releasing GPT-5, and they knew that GPT-5 was less sycophantic. All right. So it was just going to be less agreeable with people, but also people weren't really going to be able to use this new model as a standalone therapist. right? Because they put up additional guardrails on that. So they said that ChatGPT is being tuned for task completion in real outcomes, not maximizing time on app or clicks. So they were defining success as you did what you came for and chose to return over time. And there is a mental health focus. So they did talk about it. So they admitted that they've missed on this in the past in spotting delusion or emotional dependence in its GPT-4o model and is upgrading detection and responses with pointers to evidence-based resources. So now they're putting these guardrails in use for high-stake personal questions, like if you're breaking up with someone or making a big personal, emotional relational decision, ChatGPT will avoid direct prescriptions and instead guide thinking with questions, pros and cons, and next steps, which I think is the right thing, right? But unfortunately, you have millions of people that, I'll say it, they became addicted to using GPT-4o specifically to validate whatever feelings they had. So they also talked about gentle break reminders in ChatGPT in the middle of long sessions, right? So people didn't become too dependent on the models. And also they're working with 90 plus physicians across 30 countries, human computer interface researchers, and an advisory group in mental health and youth development to evaluate and stress test these new safeguards. It's better now, but this whole sycophancy issue got straight up out of hand in April. So in April, OpenAI did release an update to GPT-4o that they had to roll back within a week. And it was absolutely terrible and made this problem even worse. And I think that this is the first time that we really started talking about models that are too sycophant, right? That are too just reflecting whatever you say. But the April update was bad, so bad that OpenAI, like I said, less than a week later had to roll that update out. So a lot of people don't know and understand, which is why I think it's important when we talk about how we rely on AI models. AI models aren't just updated, when it goes from 4.0 to 5. No, they're updated often multiple times a month, small upgrades under the hood. This was one of those updates in April of this year that essentially ChatGPT would just literally reflect anything. You could give it the absolute worst idea known to humans and say, hey, is this a good idea? And it would say, absolutely, go for it, right? You're like, hey, I don't like the paint color on my house. I think I should burn it down. Is that a good idea? It'd say, yes. Paint is expensive. Fire will help you get rid of it. You should do it, right? And then we saw a lot of these horror stories that people, unfortunately, took the advice of this overly sycophantic model. And they did address it. So they rolled it back because it made ChatGPT too flattering and overly agreeable, and they reverted to an earlier, more balanced version. But at this point, I think the cat was out of the bag. And this is a huge issue, but people liked it. And the issue stemmed from overweighting short-term feedback when tuning the model's default personality, leading to supported but sometimes disingenuous responses that could erode trust. And they did, like I said, they went on to fix it. All right, so let's wrap this up and give you my takeaway and why I think it's actually straight up silly that people revolted against GPT-5. Were there mistakes in the rollout of GPT-5? Absolutely, right? We can talk about what people are calling GraphGate. There was some problems with the graphs. There was a problem with the auto model routing feature. So there were a lot of problems with the GPT-5 rollout. But I think one of the biggest problems reported by users was, hey, this model is no longer my best friend. This model no longer feels like I can share my my life's personal, deepest secrets, and the model will tell me what to do. It's a good thing because I think how the majority of people, the top 3 use cases, according to the Harvard Business Review, were for personal, highly personal life decisions that I don't think you should be solely relying on an AI model for. I think using an AI chatbot as your lone therapist will only make problems worse. Like I said, there's obviously probably millions of positive stories, but I think for every story where someone was like, hey, I got great advice out of ChatGPT and this really helped me deal with these issues, I'd say for every one of those stories you hear, there's 5 absolutely terrible stories where people are misusing this or using older models in a way that just drive down societal issues. It just is creating bigger divide because people are looking at AI models as a source of absolute truth, even though they're easily manipulated or they're just mirroring back whatever your preconceived notions is, no matter how wrong they are. Ultimately, large language models are designed to be helpful assistants, which means even the smartest and most capable models may still give you absolutely bad advice. People, a screenshot or a result from an AI model does not make it true. Large language models, I think, are great for sounding boards or for supplementary mental health support, but not as a primary source. So the takeaway here, y'all, don't cancel GPT-5. And if you were if GPT-4o was your only friend, right? I'm not going to judge your situation, but I think that's a problem that requires professional human help. If GPT-4o was making your decisions for you and you loved it because it just always sided with you, I don't think that's going to help you in the long term. That's going to make things much worse. All right. I hope today's episode was helpful. This is one of those things when I saw people, trying to essentially cancel GPT-5 and this huge uproar, I said, I've got to get this off my chest because I think it's important that we have a conversation about this, that we discuss this, because if anything, I think that large language models were being used as a weapon to reflect the ugliness in society that I think has unfortunately grown uglier and uglier over the past decade or so. And I think it's time that we start using large language models for good, not just to validate terrible ideas, not to reiterate emotions that maybe we shouldn't be feeling. But I think this is where we talk about human in the loop. This is where we need more humans involved. There's a reason that there are trained clinical professionals that would normally handle this. And hey, as much as I love AI, and yes, I think it can be, AI chatbots can be a good secondary sounding board. If you're using an AI chatbot as your only friend, as your sole source of advice to make decisions in your personal life, you need to stop. I think it's dangerous. All right. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. If this was helpful, please tell someone about it. If you're listening on the podcast, appreciate your support. Please make sure to subscribe and follow the show. Leave us a rating. I would really appreciate it. And then I would appreciate you going to youreverydayai.com. Sign up for the free daily newsletter. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back tomorrow and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.